Okay, we're back. And I want to ask our panel on this special Pride Month, What the Hype? What was our first introduction to a character that was a member of the LGBTQIA plus community in mainstream media? What was our first introduction? And, why not? We'll ask a follow-up question. Would the portrayal age well by today's standards of inclusion and what we come to expect out of mainstream media?
Initially, I was going to say Anderson Cooper, but I don't think that's the answer you're looking for.
Well, he's a character, kind of. Yeah.
No, I mean, I love
what
him.
a character.
Well, look, and the thing is, putting a gay person on TV as a news anchor, as an interviewer, look, that's representation too. Like, okay, yeah. I'm thinking more in terms of like fictional characters in media and film.
Yeah, for sure. So, I was thinking about this and I had to think about it for a while because I know there have been examples over the years. But when I think about the first time that I remember watching a show where, in the words of David Yates, there was, explicit gayness, in that, the character was just openly gay. On screen that I remember really sticking out to me was David from 6 Feet Under. I don't know if anyone here ever watched 6 Feet Under.
It's a good show.
Yes. I feel like, and Eric, I'm curious for your thoughts on this, given that I feel like 6 Feet Under itself as a show has not necessarily aged well. But I really did appreciate the depiction of David's character because it was the first time I had ever seen a mainstream media portrayal of someone going, from the journey of being in the closet to coming out to their family and their community and to being in an openly gay relationship. I'd never seen that on television before. So that one really sticks out to me. I do feel like sometimes with David's character, they veered into some stereotypes. Like, I'm thinking about, he had some risky, sexual behaviors at times, which I feel like is kind of a pigeonhole that I think particularly gay men get, pushed into in TV shows. And they also really leaned into, one particular story arc where it was, an ecstasy-fueled, club, crash out over heartbreak, and he was wearing really, really tight tops, everything that is just so representative of that point in time, the early 2000s, when you imagine a stereotypical representation of a gay club or a gay bar. That was kind of the vibe they did with him a couple of times, and I didn't love that. But overall, I did like the character. I thought he was one of the more compelling characters in the show. And I liked that his identity was coming out, and his sexuality, it was a big part of his story, but it wasn't the only part of his character. It wasn't his entire personhood, which I really appreciated. So I think the character would hold up okay today. I don't think it's the worst. I don't think it's the best.
Okay. Yeah, that's a guy I remember seeing at least through the first season and thought it was a show that definitely all of its characters are shown to be human. And don't they run a mortuary or a business?
Yeah, they run a funeral home.
Yeah. And am I correct in remembering that Michael C. Hall sees and interacts with his deceased father throughout the?
Yeah, I mean they all do.
Because that's Dexter too.
Yes.
It's this. It's another episode. It's another show where Michael C. Hall is talking to his dead dad. But this was the first one. But
yes. Yeah.
That's neither here nor there.
And he was gay in this show.
That's true. I don't. Yeah, I haven't watched enough Dexter to make a judgment there. Pam, what is your first introduction to a character?
So, like Laura, I had to think about this for a minute because
in my head, I was like, I'm sure there was somebody before this, but the only one I could think of as far as like the earliest my brain would allow me to is Willow on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was a really big deal when she got into a relationship with Tara, and I believe that they were the first recurring lesbian couple on television. So big, huge impact on pop culture, and people still talk about the representation there for sure. As to your second question, though, it's hard to say whether the representation holds up because some people criticize the show deciding to lean into the lesbian storyline as being bi erasure because prior to that, Willow was in a heteronormative relationship with Oz.
Oh.
But the show never fully states that she's bisexual, so that's just like, it's more like fan speculation and not necessarily like corroborated by the showrunners. And that's like that's where it gets a little tricky with fictional characters, right? Like real people can tell you I was just conforming. You know, I was never actually bi. I was just conforming. I thought I had to date somebody that was a gender opposite from me, but like secretly I've been gay all along. So it's tough. But I wouldn't want to like, you know, contribute to anybody that really felt seen perhaps by this idea that Willow is actually bisexual by saying that that's not justified. Especially because we see her dating both genders.
I apologize.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, does it, because I'm not familiar with the show, do you get the impression that that was something that the creators were trying to, like, maybe have their cake and eat it too? Like, were they doing, like, a cursed child thing where it was like, we're going to seed in these little elements, and then that way, if anybody in the audience identifies with this, good for us, but we don't get yelled at by people who don't.
You know,
I feel like this must have been a decade or two too soon of rainbow capitalism, where we're like gonna bait people, basically queer baiting.
I don't think they thought too much about it, other than like they're gonna get together. Honestly, because Eric is right. This is kind of like more of a vapid time in television in terms of like really trying to unpack sexuality specifically. And to be fair, it's been a while since I've watched Buffy through in this storyline specifically. But yeah, like I think like the reality is that like, yes, she was in a heteronormative relationship and then she ended up with a woman. So it's like, again, tough to say, but you know, like this is like a very real thing that happens though. I feel like bisexual characters, especially in mainstream media, are often misrepresented or almost kind of like Laura was saying is kind of seen as sexual deviance, like having their cake and eating it too. It's like, oh, I'm bi because I want like double the options. And that can also be like a negative stereotype as well, right, Robert?
Yeah, I've heard I've heard it all. I do hope that we get more bi representation in film and television, but you know, just to share a little of my personal journey, I did not kind of publicly come out as bisexual until just a few years ago. It was actually in 2020 because, you know, wasn't doing anything else. Might as well come out. Like, gotta have something to do. But I had always been, I'd kind of identified as queer. I kind of felt like, oh, maybe I don't know if the ratio is enough to justify, because the idea back then was there are two genders and it's 50% this, 50% that. Obviously, my way of thinking has drastically evolved. But I've heard, I've had close personal friends tell me that, you know, I had someone tell me a mutual of ours had at one point, and I do not believe he feels this way anymore, but at one point had repeated that idea about, I don't think about me, but just in general about, well, you know, are you more likely to cheat because you can go after anyone?
That sucks.
And I was actually just telling my husband today, there was someone I was talking to when I was in high school, when I was not really necessarily out to anyone at all. Someone asked, and I believe that it was a good faith question, but didn't understand the point of being bi because in her mind, she's like, well, you're going to have to choose at some point. Like, if you get in a relationship with a man or a woman, you're going to have to choose someone.
Stone. Like,
Right,
you have
and
to have a preference.
Well,
least a
it's
little
also
bit.
this idea
Yeah.
of being attracted to more genders than monogamy allows you to pursue, right? So it's like these other societal expectations and being like, well, you can't be the way you are because it's not going to be fruitful in our societies. You should change, kind of thing.
Right. And I mean, my point to it was, well, if your goal is to get into a monogamous relationship, which I will totally put out there is not for everyone. It is for me, but I know other people have different boundaries and different preferences with their partner. But if your long-term goal is to have a monogamous partner, it doesn't matter if you are straight, gay, or bi. You are going to choose a person that cuts out all of the other options.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense, because you're like, hey, if I'm on the monogamy train, then yeah, my intent is to be in this relationship for the rest of my life. Like, what a weird thing to say.
Choo choo.
Like, yeah, but like, imagine saying that to a straight person, and it's like, well, first of all, yeah, straight people cheat all the time, so it's not like, yeah, I don't think cheating is like unique to any particular sexual orientation.
Yeah, I've been on Reddit.
Yeah. There's some stories, that's for sure.
So I'll say what my first introduction to, I think, a queer character on TV or movies were. And it's actually as gay as you can possibly get. Harvey Fierstein in Mrs. Doubtfire as the brother of Robin Williams' Daniel Hillard character. And Mrs. Doubtfire, talk about Chris Columbus directed romp with Robin Williams, huge comedy, tons of heart. Not only is the main character dressing in drag, and it's for a heartwarming, non-predatory reason, which is that he wants to see his kids, but the brother character, played by Harvey Fierstein, is a married man, or married to, so they call him, Uncle Frank and Aunt Jack. The Frank and Jack is this gay couple that are helping Robin Williams' character, get into and find the Mrs. Doubtfire look. And so it's this cutaway scene where they basically sing a bunch of show tunes and are making Robin Williams up to find the role, find the character that's going to babysit his kids. And I don't even think they're in the movie past that point, but it's such a high point and an energy shift and just a memorable part of that movie that I think that's when I first took notice and was like, wait, what's going on here? Are these just very, excitable men? Or is there something deeper? And my little child brain didn't quite comprehend, but I think you comprehend more than you know, or you're like, okay, that's the way they're portrayed there. So that was definitely a very, very positive first introduction to. And I will say how
lovely that, like, when he says Uncle Frank and Aunt Jack, the kids don't even flinch.
Yeah, no.
It's just like normal. And I will say, as somebody that grew up basically in San Francisco, like that, I think that we were like very much predisposed to just be like, oh, that's just the way things are. Like we were exposed to people on all sides of the LGBTQ spectrum and also to trans people as well. And, my parents, bless them, they really did a great job of answering all those innocent questions that kids have and, trying to make it make sense for tiny brains. And we just accepted it for what it was.
That is such a crucial point. Yeah, that is such a crucial point on that. Mm-hmm. And because kids don't, what's that, like, prejudice is learned, hate is learned.
Yeah.
It's like,
and sometimes like kids, like, they really don't have to understand beyond, that, like, to your Mrs. Doubtfire
point. You don't need to.
That's Aunt Jack,
It's Aunt
Jack.
Shout
out to Scott Capurro, local comedian who plays Aunt Jack.
Well, and I know Robin Williams is from San Francisco, and I know it's really important to drum up the area. But yeah, I mean, what a great film that hits a lot of those marks. And for being so wildly unconventional around gender, I mean, I wouldn't begin to call Mrs. Doubtfire a trans character, but the way that it plays with gender norms, I mean, with a soundtrack that includes "Dude Looks Like a Lady," you know,
and Luck
by
Be a Lady while he's
like
getting
they're
all
having
dressed
a
up.
lot of fun, and there are so many. I mean, I could rant and rave about all the good things about Mrs. Doubtfire, but one of my favorite scenes from that movie, again, kind of continuing down the path to other LGBTQ moments in that same film, when he gets on the bus. So Daniel gets on the bus and he realizes his stocking is down, and Robin Williams' legs, they've made carpets out of them. I'm sure he's donated, like Locks of Love has it for hair. Like, I'm honestly sure. But he pulls up, you know, he's like, oh, got to do this. And the bus driver, who's been very infatuated with Euphegenia Doubtfire, like says some heartwarming thing about being important to keep warm in the winter. And, he, you know, there's a moment where Daniel realizes that the bus driver, this old man, is flirting with her and like coming on with her, and the way that is handled is so human, I think, because she's absolutely, like, she treats it with the respect that kind of thing means. Is like, because she's the one that, you know, has because what she's doing, it's perfectly reasonable for this guy to assume that she's this old lady, or that he's this old lady.
Yeah, and probably too a testament to the fact that, you know, Robin Williams is like, you know, he's wasn't just like living in the area, but also local to the area, grew up not too far away from where I grew up as well. So probably was exposed to just different identities as well, because the queer community has always had, you know, they've always held space in the city, and there's something beautiful about that. And there's something that I think is just accepted about that when you grow up here by the majority of people. Obviously, there's always going to be bigots everywhere, but
yeah. But again, it that could have very easily been an uncomfortable scene from the point of view of it being like toxic, or, oh no, what did Daniel do to this old man? Or if the bus driver got angry when he you know, like, none of this happened. There was no negative commentary. It was all, these are human experiences in this guy trying to see his kids. You know, it's all just, I gotta give a lot of credit to Chris Columbus, honestly, in directing that, and Robin Williams and everyone involved with that.
That's so
Sally
true.
Field is great in that movie. Pierce Brosnan's great in that movie. Everybody's
it's
in
a
that
good
movie.
one. It holds
Yeah.
up.
So he gave us Mrs. Doubtfire, then he did the witchcraft movie, then he did Rent. So all three factions of people who had a problem with any of that.
Yeah, that's
so true.
That's pretty fair. Robert, what was your first introduction to gay characters?
So I'm going to expound. So I'm going to expand a little bit on what I was talking about in that earlier section with the Simpsons episode, because what's really important to me about that episode and why it is such a good representation is because the character of John, played by John Waters, is definitely depicted as a little flamboyant. He's got the quirks, he's got the 90s gay sass, but he's very much intentionally portrayed as, for lack of a better word, normal by the standards of what TV viewers would assume is normal. They had a note of, like, not doing, like, limp wrists or, like, have his body language, anything like that. There are some other characters in the episode that do fall into those stereotypes, but it seems like it's more in a celebratory way than in a mocking way. So basically the context of it and why I would recommend it to everyone, even if you've not seen it, is John Waters' character runs this little novelty shop at the mall. Homer invites him over because he's like, we got a bunch of useless crap at the house, come over. And has a great time with them. The next morning, the second Marge informs him that John is gay, he turns instantly and uncharacteristically aggressively homophobic and starts spouting out for the rest of the episode the talking points that you're supposed to feel about these gay people. It's not natural. It's, there's actually a line where he uses the word queer and Homer goes, that's another thing. Stop using that word. That's our word for making fun of you. But the main conflict of the episode...
That's on the nose.
The main conflict of the episode is Bart begins to, be interested in, like, these old vintage wigs or candies or whatever. So Homer's thought immediately is, oh no, what if my boy is gay because I'm not a good enough father and I haven't taught him how to be a man? And the rest of the episode is just him trying and in his mind failing to protect Bart from turning gay. And fortunately I do have another thing to add at the end on my recommendations, but I'm going to put this out here now. The reason I so strongly recommend it is I watched it with my husband the other night because it was one of the few episodes he had not seen. And it is as brilliantly written as it is uncomfortably relevant, because there are some scenes where like Moe and Barney are talking to Homer, and it's like things that you hear today about like, oh, you gotta, you can't let him, turn into a sissy, and oh, he's gonna catch the gay, like all of those ideas about how someone can be influenced to be queer or bi or trans or gay or whatever, that is of course by the end of the episode completely shot down and
diffused, yeah.
And basically it's addressed. What's also great is that very few characters in this episode share in Homer's delusion. Like Marge tells him frequently throughout the episode, like, you don't even know what what you think you're supposed to be angry about at this point. So, but in 1997, as, a young lad who kind of understood what being gay was, it was, there was nothing about sexual proclivity or, any kind of horrible, tragic demise like we see in a lot of other queer media.
Well, because you teed it up, Robert, I do want to mention we will be giving our recommendations of our favorite characters, favorite films depicting all of that kind of thing, but we're going to do it after this break.